Welcome in, everybody. Thursday night edition of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody is having a great Thursday evening, Friday morning if you are listening. We're going to do something a little bit different here on today's Aaron Torres pod. So it's 6 o'clock Eastern as I'm recording here. NFL draft is this evening. And if you listen to this show normally, you know we actually talk a ton of football. These last couple weeks, though, it has just been so crazy with the college hoops transfer portal and players moving and coaches moving and all that good stuff that I just bring it up because, there's been a lot of hoops to discuss. However, because of the timing of today, we are going to stick to basketball. Now, for people who are familiar with the show, you know I love college football. I love the NFL draft. But the bottom line is we're going about 6 p.m. Eastern time. By the time we talked anything draft related, it would be outdated. And it's also worth noting, by the way, I actually have family in town. And as much as I love this show, couldn't be waiting around till midnight Eastern to react to the NFL draft. So we'll have some NFL draft stuff on Monday. But when I tell you that we got plenty to talk about from the college hoops perspective, oh my goodness. Every time you think it's going to slow down, it somehow gets a little bit crazier. And today is no different. So what we're going to do is a couple things. One, I have put out my updated way too early top 25. I want to quickly hit on that, where things stand here now in late April, going basically into May. And then, oh, by the way, we will switch gears and get to what should be another chaotic 72 or so hours in college hoops. Kentucky, Mark Pope, new staff, has probably one of the craziest visitor weekends that I have ever seen since I began covering this sport. We'll talk about who's on campus, what it all means. John Calipari, by the way, he is gearing up himself. Several confirmed visitors. This on top of the high school players that have been on campus. I think there is a not zero chance that I just update my top 25 here on Thursday night. And by Sunday morning, Sunday night, Monday morning, both could be in the top 10. So we'll talk about that. We'll get to some big names who entered the transfer portal. Lamont Butler, obviously I've shared some details on that. Kadari Richmond, Norchad Omier. And then we will wrap with the very strange recruitment of Liam McNeeley, who as of right now has not committed to UConn. I think everybody thought it was coming. We can't quite figure out what's going on. So we are going to get into all of that all show long. It is going to there's just so much going on, even for me. It's kind of crazy and kind of hard to keep up with. So I figured we'll do all this. Again, a little bit of counter programming. I would love to talk NFL draft, but just the schedule is not going to work out. So we will focus on hoops today. One quick announcement before we get started, because a lot of you have asked. So if you have ordered any shirts or anything through the Aaron Torres Media store, I appreciate your patience. Okay. We've had a major run of both the Hope and Pope Kentucky shirts and the Big Pig Invasion Arkansas shirts, Mike Woodson as well. We've completely sold out of everything, okay? So I've had a few of you ask me, okay, Torres, when is my shirt coming? When should I expect it? What do I need to know? Just be patient with me. I'm hoping to get the shirts by the end of this weekend, hoping to have them in the mail by Monday. I have not forgotten about you. I'm not taking your money. That's not what it's about. It's just about getting the printer to get the t-shirts to me, and I will get them in the mail as soon as possible. Can always hit me up, Aaron Torres podcast questions at gmail.com if you want an update. But at the same time, I appreciate your patience. They will be out in the mail as soon as they can. And then, oh, by the way, once that happens, it's worth noting, you will get an email with all of your shipping information, etc. With that said, though, there's no more time to waste. It's a Thursday. The draft is coming up, but we got hoops to talk about. There is no more time to waste. So let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, so bluntly, we are now basically a month into the college basketball offseason. I guess it's really about 3 weeks. National championship was that second Monday in April. UConn wins its second straight title. And obviously, after that game, I put out my way too early top 25. Now, it was hard as heck, as you can imagine, but things have started to kind of take shape. And what I just wanted to do, go ahead and give you an updated look at my top 25 before it gets completely screwed up this weekend when we get a million different commitments going in a million different directions, but figured I'd just very quickly get you my way too early top 25. So we are going to skip around. By the way, keep in mind, you can read the updated top 25 at aarontorresonline.com. But again, I follow this stuff on a day-to-day basis. It is so crazy. So I figured I'd just give you my updated top 10. And it's also worth noting, be patient. If your school ain't here and you expect them to be there, I think there's a very good chance this could all shake out completely differently. I think Kentucky's going to be in the mix by the time this offseason is done. Same with Arkansas. I think our buddy Big Rick Energy, Rick Pitino, has a couple tricks up his sleeve. So I just bring it up to say, please be patient. This thing is ever evolving. All right, producer Matt, let's get to it. At number 10 on AT's Way Too Early Top 25, you can see it on the screen. Drum roll, please. It's the Duke Blue Devils. And so Duke was actually my number one team coming out of the season. That, of course, was under the assumption that Jeremy Roach and Mark Mitchell were coming back. Well, Mark Mitchell goes to Missouri. Jeremy Roach goes to Baylor. 4 or 5 guys that aren't really difference makers, I would say, have also transferred. 7 in total are out the door. So I still like Duke. I don't love Duke. Now, to credit to John Shire, because on Monday's show, we talked an awful lot about the fact that, John Shire, frankly, was in a position where he was basically all freshmen at that time. They basically lost every single marquee older player on that roster, and it was really going to be heavily reliant on Cooper Flagg. Well, to his credit, they went out and got Malik Brown, forward from Syracuse. They went out and got Mason Gillis, a forward from Purdue, who I like a lot. And obviously, it is still going to be reliant heavily on the freshman, most notably Cooper Flagg, number 1 player in America, etc. And they do still have Tyrese Proctor coming back. They do still have Caleb Foster coming back. And I think they have another, another move or two in the portal in them. But it will be basically freshman-centric. And we talked about it all year with Kentucky. Can you still win with freshmen in 2024, 2025? We're going to find out, because Duke is very freshman-centric. Number 9 on AT's Way Too Early Top 25 version 2.0. It is my team, my squad, the Purdue Boilermakers. That is right. Who could forget Torres is running with Purdue fans? We had a blast this year with those crazy Purdue fans. I will say all the ones that I met at the Final Four are actually very nice. It was funny. I actually had a buddy of mine who watches the show. He says, Torres, you look like you're in a bunker somewhere doing this show. Why don't you have a better background? I said, these Purdue fans, I can't give them any tips as to where I'm going to be, but Purdue does come in at number 9. And listen, I poked a lot at them, didn't love some things, but they had an incredible season. And for the most part, outside of Zach Edey, they bring back everybody else. Braden Smith is back. Fletcher Lawyer is back. Lance Jones is gone. But the kid Miles Colvin that is there, I actually really like a lot. And so I just bring it up because that is a team to me that they are who they are. They're going to develop within their system. They are going to, they're going to get guys that fit them. And it is worth noting as well, they have 2 guys 7'2" or bigger to replace Zach Edey. A kid named Will Berg is going to take his place. Got a chance to talk to him a little bit at the Final Four. I think he is ready to step into those Zach Edey shoes. Purdue at number 9. At number 8, an AT's Way Too Early Top 25. I think the most misunderstood team of the offseason so far, that is the Arizona Wildcats. And I know that Tommy Lloyd right now, it's kind of that weird thing. 3 straight sort of early tournament losses. This year, you're in LA. You have a chance to potentially go to the Final Four. You lose to Clemson. But what I would say about Arizona, I've seen a lot of people kind of comment on the fact that, they lost 2 starters to the transfer portal and they could potentially lose all 5 starters. Caleb Love, Keyshawn Johnson, Pella Larson have all declared for the draft. Keyshawn Johnson is out of eligibility. Pella Larson says he's not back. Caleb Love has said that he is leaving the option open that he could return. But I bring it up because Umar Ballo left, goes to Indiana. Kylan Boswell leaves to go to Illinois. And everybody says, oh my goodness, what's wrong with Arizona? Sounded like Jerry Seinfeld there. What is the deal with Arizona? Well, I'm here to tell you, Arizona planned for all of this offseason. Jaden Bradley was their best backcourt player by the end of this season. I can't say for certain, but I'm pretty sure that the coaching staff basically told Kylan Boswell, your job, you ain't going to be the starting point guard if you come back. That's Jaden Bradley's job. And so I think Kylan Boswell, I don't want to say he was forced out, but I think, there was a scenario where they were like, you're not going to start if you come back next year. And it's the same with Ballo. He's going to be a sixth-year guy next year. They brought in Krivas. Krivas is really good. Big guy from Lithuania, I believe. And they were basically just like, dude, this kid's ready to play. Ballo, you got to go somewhere else. So Arizona's at number 8. It is worth noting, by the way, 3 elite high school prospects coming in, including Carter Bryant, a McDonald's All-American. One quick note, though. KJ Lewis, who I think might be their best long-term NBA prospect on this past year's roster, was the 7th man, has declared for the NBA draft. We assume he's coming back. I do think it changes the calculus a little bit on this team if he doesn't come back. Also worth noting, they added a transfer in Trey Townsend on Wednesday afternoon. Number 7 on AT's, way too early. Top 25. We are getting it going here. Baylor comes in at number 7. By the way, I should make one quick note. I don't believe RJ Davis has officially announced he's returning to North Carolina. So they will not be in the top 10. If RJ Davis is officially back, they will make it. And I don't think they're done in the portal yet either. But number 7 is Baylor. And it's for the reasons you know why. So I'll even say this about Baylor. There's been a couple times over the last couple years where I've really kind of felt like I didn't love the roster as it was constructed going into a season. This year I do, though. Jeremy Roach is coming in at point guard. VJ Edgecombe is a star. I've said it many times. I talked to all the recruiting guys at the Final Four, and they all said, like, look, 2024 class isn't great, but Cooper Flagg from Duke is awesome. Ace Bailey, who's going to Rutgers, is awesome, and VJ Edgecombe is a dude. So now you have those two guys that play off of each other well, veterans in Jalen Bridges. I don't think they're done yet. Do think they're probably the favorites for Jonas Adu. We'll do a portal update here in a little bit. Baylor at number 7 is worth noting, by the way. Their lead recruiter, Alvin Brooks, just took a job at Kentucky today. I don't think it impacts this roster, but it's worth keeping an eye on. Number 6 in AT's top 25. Really cool story. It is the Iowa State Cyclones. So Iowa State, of course, made the Sweet 16 this year. Otzelberger has done an awesome job. So back-to-back seasons, or 3 seasons at Iowa State, 2 of them he has made a Sweet 16. This year he wins the Big 12 tournament. Bring it up to say next year he returns a good chunk of his roster, including his 2 best players, Tamin Lipsey, and also on top of that, the other guard. I'm blanking on his name. I just had it in front of me, but you know who the guard is, the kid who gets all the buckets. Why am I blanking on this kid's name? It's going to kill me right now. So forgive me. I'm going to pull up my own top 25 that I should have had up to begin with. But Iowa State is at number 6. And the player I was thinking about was Keyshawn Gilbert. How could I forget? Keyshawn Gilbert, Tamin Lipsey. Also, they've done some work in the portal. Added Deshaun Jackson, big man from Charlotte. Also, they added the Jefferson kid from St. Mary's, who I actually like a lot. St. Mary's kind of that team. They're a nice mid-major team. But I think a couple of their guys were like, I think there's bigger roles for me at bigger places. We've talked about Aiden Mahaney. Iowa State's really good. They come in at number 6. Number 5. I'm going to get crushed by this fan base. I do have UConn at number 5. And I'll tell you why I'm going to get crushed. It's because, last year, remember, UConn was like a fringe top 10 team in the preseason. Nobody was really sure what to expect. And they go on to have the best season in school history to win a national championship. And I've seen some other people who do these top 25s that have basically just said, you know what? We're just going to put UConn at number 1 until further notice. When you go back-to-back, you have earned that right. I can't do it yet, but I do like the roster that Dan Hurley has coming back. We haven't officially gotten word from Hassan Diarra. I think he comes back. I've been given, I haven't talked to him about it. He hasn't told me anything because a lot of you have asked me. Obviously, he's been on the show quite a bit over the course of the last month. I think he comes back. Caravan, I think, comes back, was the 5th starter this year. And so I bring it up because I look at that team. Those 2 are crucial. And it's also crucial you add some stuff this spring. They've added Terrace Reed, the big man from Michigan. Liam McNeeley, we'll get to in a minute. Don't know what's going on there. Everybody thought it was a done deal. It isn't. And obviously UConn fans are starting to worry. But the good news is UConn fans will tell you they didn't get Cam Spencer until June of this past year. And so there's plenty of time to do work. Kobe Brea, the guard from Dayton, is in the mix at UConn. Aiden Mahaney, the guy I mentioned from St. Mary's, will visit UConn this weekend. So UConn is going to get their guys. I have them at number 5, which ain't bad, but there's still actually a lot of movement for them there. Number 4, you already know. Love them Cougars. The Houston Cougars. Love those Cougars. Love Houston. Houston's awesome, man. Listen, Kelvin Sampson, just bet him. Take it to the house. Bet him every single time. I am never going to doubt this, man. I still think it is one of the more underrated things in all of college hoops that Houston just went in to the Big 12, kicked butt and took names, and nobody was like surprised by it. Like you understand they were playing in the AAC last year, and they just come into the Big 12 with basically the same roster and essentially destroy everybody. I still think if they're healthy, they're probably the team that would have given UConn the toughest matchup. We'll never know. But even though they lose Jamal Shed, they added the guard from Oklahoma, Milos Uzan. And then most of their other big pieces should be back. Juwan Morgan should be back. Not Juwan Morgan. Juwan Morgan played at Indiana a million years ago. I'm talking about Juwan Roberts, excuse me. LJ Cryer's back. Emmanuel Sharp's back. Javier Francis, who was a very important piece, got hurt. Same with Joseph Tugler. I really like Houston at number 4. Number 3, top-ranked SEC team as far as I'm concerned, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, this ranking is based on Mark Sears coming back, Grant Nelson coming back. Mark Sears has officially declared for the NBA draft. I don't know if he's going to stay in. Based on how Alabama is recruiting, I think they kind of feel like it's 50-50. I don't think Mark Sears knows. I don't think the coaching staff knows if they really expect him back. They took Aiden Holloway. I don't think in a perfect world they want to start Aiden Holloway next year. They would rather him be a 6th man, learn behind Mark Sears. But obviously, I think they would if they have to. So this whole thing is down to, does Mark Sears come back? Does Grant Nelson comes back? Obviously, Latrell Wrightsell, their great 3-point shooter, announced the other day that he will return. Jaron Stevenson, that breakout NCAA tournament star from Carolina, is set to return. He's from Chapel Hill. And they got a really good recruiting class, including 2 McDonald's All-Americans. Love the Crimson Tide. Alabama is at number 3. Number 2, Gonzaga. So listen, I think as critical of Gonzaga as pretty much anybody in the national media. And I have said since the day Tommy Lloyd left, I said these Gonzaga teams do not look the same. They don't look right to me. They're not as talented as they used to be. But I give that team credit. Late in the year, go to Rupp Arena, get a win. Beat St. Mary's on the road, get a win. Beat San Francisco on the road, get a win. They get into the tournament, and then what happens? Take care of Will Wade and McNeese State. Take care of Kansas. They find themselves in the Sweet 16. Well, that team basically returns everybody. Graham Ike, Ryan Nemhard. You go on and on down the list. I do think they are a team they probably won't add very much this offseason. And so I do wonder if a UConn, if a Kentucky, if an Arkansas, if Arizona adds a piece, if Duke adds another transfer, if those are the types of teams that will eventually surpass Gonzaga. But I would counter that by also saying this year proved having holdovers, having guys that are comfortable in your system, that is a great thing in college basketball in 2024. Gonzaga is number 2. Finally, AT's number 1 team. It is right now, and I don't know if this is going to change, the Kansas Jayhawks. How about our guy Bill Self, by the way? So Bill Self, never forget, what did he say at the podium after he lost to Gonzaga in the round of 32? He said, yeah, I'm mad, but we've been kind of planning for next year for a month now. And it's like, probably not the right thing to say, kind of got what he said. He was basically implying like we've had so many injuries. We knew this probably wasn't our year. But based on how he moved in the portal, it's pretty obvious he probably was planning for a month over the course of the year. He obviously has added Riley Kugel, transfer from Florida, Zeke Mayo, transfer from South Dakota State, and also the big one, AJ Storr, 17 points per game at Wisconsin last year. Apparently might not be done. Buzz is that what's his name? Rylan Griffin. I don't know why I'm skipping all these names today. Rylan Griffin from Alabama, 11.5 points per game. Everybody seems to believe that he will eventually be a Kansas commitment. But Kansas is number 1 in my way too early top 25. You can find it all at Aaron Torres online, but Kansas 1, Gonzaga 2, Alabama 3, Houston 4, UConn 5, Iowa State 6, Baylor 7, Arizona 8, Purdue 9, and Duke 10. Couple other notes really quick. Auburn is number 11. UCLA, like, talk about some Big Mick energy. Like, Mick Cronin ain't taking this Lion down, okay? Returns a bunch of interesting players, but they've added 4 marquee transfers in the portal. Sky Clark from Louisville, Kobe Johnson from USC, Eric Daly from Oklahoma State among them. I like them a lot. North Carolina, I have at 13. I kind of mentioned them that when they get RJ Davis back, they will be a top 10 team in my rankings. Team that I like the work that they've done. Florida Gators in at number 15. Elijah Martin, the big man Rubin from Washington State, among the new players for them. I think Todd Golden has really, really impressed me as a young coach. Michigan and Dusty May. Dusty May. It's going to be May. It's going to be Dusty, baby. They've done great in the portal. We've talked a lot about them. Danny Wolf from Yale, Sam Walters from Alabama, Roddy Gale from Ohio State, a bunch of impact players. And then rounding out the top 25, I'll have to update this because there's been some moves even since I posted this on Thursday morning. But I like Indiana. I got them in the top 25. Illinois with Kylan Boswell, who we mentioned. And I'll give credit where it's due. I think Eric Musselman in just a couple weeks has put together a quick a top 25 type team. So credit Eric Musselman and USC, excuse me. I do have them at number 25. And as I said, for the Arkansas fans in the mentions, for the Kentucky fans in the mentions, for the St. John's fans in the mentions, trust me, your time is coming. And I got no doubt that your coaches are going to have you in position to succeed. So what we're going to do, take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about 2 of those teams that are not in the top 25. Arkansas, Kentucky, major recruiting weekends. Quick break. Be right back. Before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. Mora Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody, I am back. Good to be back. So, first of all, thank you again for all of you who have made purchases from the Aaron Torres online store. As I mentioned just a moment ago, if you have ordered, the goal, the plan, the hope is that, not the Hope and Pope, just the hope in general, is that by the end of this coming week, basically the goal is, if I have my druthers, if Torres has his way, the goal will be to get the shirts by the end of this week and hopefully have them in the mail no later than early next week, if possible, middle of next week. Listen, I can't control the mail. I can't control all that. But again, as soon as I have any further information, I will let you know. And as soon as they go in the mail, you will get yourself, you'll get yourself an email confirmation with all of the details that you need to know. With that said, let's go ahead and switch gears. And I do want to talk about a couple different things. And where I want to start, producer Matt, go ahead and get this time code ready. I want to start with one of the craziest recruiting weekends that I can ever remember. Okay, so you know how in football, like everything builds around that June recruiting weekend? Like I think Texas A&M had like the barbecue and, you know, Big A Day and Big Cat weekend at Auburn. Well, Kentucky is having, you know, Cats Gone Wild weekend or something, because I don't know that I have ever seen a program put together a recruiting weekend quite like what Kentucky is about to be part of in the coming couple days. Now, part of the reason why is pretty straightforward, okay? Part of the reason why Kentucky is having so many visitors in such a short time, there's two obvious reasons. The first one, they need players. As I'm recording, it's 6:30 or so Eastern on Thursday night. Always subject to change, but as I record, Kentucky has 3 players. Travis Perry, freshman, committed. Colin Chandler, transfer from BYU, committed. Amari Williams, transfer from Drexel, committed. So they're probably going to fill all 13 scholarships, so you need 10 more players. But then 2, the other big reason why Kentucky is so aggressive right now in this moment in terms of having so many visitors is because of the fact that they finally have their coaching staff in place. Alvin Brooks III was hired this week. And listen, Kentucky fans, you've read a lot about him. He is elite of the elite. I've said my piece on Jason Hart. I think he is a rock star. I think you're probably going to have Jason Hart for a year or 2 before he gets a head coaching opportunity. But Alvin Brooks, young, dynamic, everybody loves him. He is the guy that basically has helped Baylor elevate its recruiting. Keontae George, Jacoby Walter, VJ Edgecombe over the next season or so. And so Alvin Brooks is now in place, and it is leading to one of the most insane recruiting weekends that I can ever remember. Want to go through some of the players. By the way, Kentucky fans, if I miss any of them, feel free to get into the comment section, because I think I'm probably going to miss 3 or 4 players here in this update. But among the players that are now on campus for the University of Kentucky, let's just go through some of the names. So first off, right now, currently on campus, as I understand it, Thursday night, Otega Owa, 6'5" guard from Oklahoma. Now, I'll be blunt. I don't really know what's going on in Oklahoma. It feels like there's something not quite right. It feels like Porter Moser has lost his juice there. But I remember talking to Porter Moser when this kid ended up at Oklahoma. And, you know, it was a formal interview. It wasn't like, hey, you know, busting chops or whatever. But he's like, we think this kid has NBA upside. From Jersey, I believe, originally. This year, you know, he's more of an off-the-ball guard than kind of an on-the-ball guard, which is fine. It's just, it is what it is. But 6'5", good positional size. This year averaged 11.5 points, 4 boards, and 37% shooting from 3. Again, Oklahoma, he did struggle down the stretch a little bit. Oklahoma as a team struggled down the stretch a little bit. Certainly felt like there was some strife in that locker room, as basically the entire starting 5 all transferred out. But Otega Owa is a very, very, very good guard. Probably more on the ball or more off the ball than on it. But the kind of guy that can attack, can finish at the rim. Really good player. He is currently on campus right now. Some of the other visitors. This is a big one. Davion Smith, guard, Utah, is set to visit campus this weekend. And one thing we know Kentucky needs is a point guard. And we're going to talk a little bit about a name that you need to know here in just a few moments. But Davion Smith, veteran guard. I mean, I think he's going to be a 6th-year guy. Began his career at Mississippi State. Goes to Georgia Tech. Plays last year at Utah. Remember, Utah was really good for most of the season. They were really on the right side of the bubble probably until about the last 2 weeks of the regular season. They end up, you know, going to the NIT, having a nice little run, but you know, it just didn't work out, whatever. I bring it up because Davion Smith was as good as any guard in the Pac-12, essentially. 13 points per game, 6 rebounds per game for a 6-foot guard is darn impressive. 7 assists per game. And so you talk about a guy that can put guys in spots, can have success, can run an offense, can do everything you pretty much need to do. Davion Smith is it. by the way, shot 41% from three this year as well. And so obviously in that Mark Pope system, what do you want? You want guys that can pass, dribble, shoot. He can do all of them. He gets others involved, and that shooting stroke has come along. He was not a great shooter historically in his career, but has been much better over the last season or so. Really good guard, a little bit undersized, needs the ball in his hands. I don't think he's the kind of guy that you play off the ball. You got to have him on the ball. Not super big. Doesn't really matter. Really good player, is set to visit this weekend. Speaking of visitors this weekend, Andrew Carr, 6'8", played at Wake Forest this year. 6'8" wing, really talented player. Surprise, surprise. By the way, every guy Kentucky brings in is going to be a talented player. I don't think you need me to tell you, okay? But played at Wake Forest. And listen, Steve Forbes, really good coach who really puts his guys in position to succeed. He has had 2 or 3 of these big wing guys, and they all have success. Jake LaRavia was a guy that nobody had ever heard of that ended up getting drafted in that Wake Forest system. They just found their replacement for Andrew Carr, by the way, in Omaha Ballou, former McDonald's All-American from Iowa State. But Andrew Carr, 6'8", 13 points, 6.5 rebounds a game, 37% shooting from three. Again, perfect fit for Mark Pope's system. Really good player, veteran player, 1 year of eligibility left. There is a reason that everybody wants that guy. And I think it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out over the course of this weekend. Worth noting, he is taking 3 visits this week. Texas Tech early, Kentucky, and Wake Forest, or Villanova, excuse me. One thing I will say, this isn't a knock. It's just a reality. Texas Tech is among the most aggressive programs, as I understand it, in NIL. They're willing to pay. Texas Tech is going to be a factor in all of these recruitments. But Andrew Carr is headed to campus this weekend. Know who else is headed to campus this weekend? A kid that I really like a lot. That is Andrej Stojakovic. I think it's Andrej. I should check on that. It's Stojakovic, okay? Peja's son, played at Stanford, former McDonald's All-American. And I remember watching him 2 years ago, Pangos All-American camp, okay? And listen, this isn't to tear down what a previous staff did at Stanford. But Stanford struggled on the court. Their players are all in demand. Cannon Carlisle goes to Indiana. The big guy, Renaud, he came back because I think he was set to graduate, wants to get that Stanford degree. Brandon Angel is headed to Oregon. So all of their guys are in great position to have success at other programs. And Stojakovic, I'm just telling you, we are just scratching the surface of his potential. 6'8", he plays like his pops. And I know it's not fair to compare him to his dad, who was like an NBA All-Star and all that. But he's super skilled. He's got a great feel for the game. This was something that didn't come across at Stanford this year. Really was not much of a passer. Was just a guy that just, kind of made a couple shots here and there, but didn't show the full range of skills. Averaged about 8 points, 3 rebounds, under an assist per game. I'm here to tell you, you get him in that Mark Pope system, he's going to be a star. Listen, I think putting him in went to Stanford. Don't blame him. But you go to a basketball-centric school where you're going to be pushed hard every day, and it's not to say that Kentucky's academics aren't good, nothing like that. But, I think you're going to get the best version of him. He is down to Carolina, Cal, and Kentucky. Worth noting, by the way, on Kentucky, I saw that Hubert Davis, the North Carolina coach, was actually in Lexington on Thursday. I think that was to recruit Adu Thiero. Neither here nor there. A couple other names for Kentucky. The big one that I know everybody knows, Great Osabor, is set to visit campus this weekend. And in all of our recruiting updates and all that good stuff, all of our recruiting updates, we've talked about him. He was the Mountain West Player of the Year, 17 points, 9 rebounds per game. Big, low post guy. He's about 6'8", 6'9". The only thing on him, he's not really a stretch guy. He's kind of an old school Oscar Tshiebwe, everything within 5 feet. I have kind of wondered, I don't know that you can play him and the Amari Williams kid that just committed together, but Mark Pope plays a lot of dudes a lot of minutes. So maybe one starts, one comes off the bench, different lineups, whatever. But you get Great Osabor within 5 feet of the basket, it's automatic too, okay? And so we've talked about him. Now it's worth noting, was at Utah State. He is taking 4 visits over the coming days. Louisville is next on the schedule. Also Washington as well. Texas Tech, as I just mentioned. will not be outbid in the NIL space. Washington, it's worth noting, that is where his former head coach Danny Sprinkle went. And so you look at any of those four spots, I could see him potentially landing at, I don't know that I could see him landing at any four spots, but I just bring it up because, like, I could see him basically at a couple of them. I think the big question becomes, if he is blown away by Kentucky, does he even take those other visits? That is something that I do not know. But boy, oh boy, what a couple days for Kentucky. By the way, producer Matt, go ahead, pop up the tweet from my buddy David Sisk. David Sisk is a rock star, works for Rivals.com. This tweet caught my attention, but I think he's right. I've been around recruiting since 1993. The first team I was ever involved with on the coaching end had 10 high major players, 2 went to Kentucky. Having said that, I've never seen anything like Mark Pope is doing with this many recruits coming in at one time this weekend. So be prepared, Kentucky fans. I think the news comes fast and furious. I know that I have just said that we'll talk some NFL draft on Monday's show, but I feel like we are going to get major news over the course of the next couple days. I think Kentucky probably goes from the 3 players they currently have to potentially 4, 5, 6 by the end of the weekend. By the way, also worth noting on the Kentucky perspective, we will have an update on Liam McNeeley momentarily, but there is some real buzz that Kentucky is making headway. He visited UConn this week. He did not commit to UConn this week. And as somebody who's covered this for a long time, you don't get that commitment. By the way, it doesn't just apply to UConn. There's other schools recruiting other guys that thought they had guys locked up, and that's not the case. You don't get that commitment. You leave things open. It could get crazy. Really quickly, Kentucky is not the only school that is going to have a couple big days on the recruiting trail, because let me tell you this. Not only is Kentucky on its way to having a ton of big name recruits, but the guy that used to coach them, you may know him as John Calipari. John Calipari is about to have a monster weekend in recruiting himself. By the way, if you're a Kentucky fan that is listening to this segment, I'm just going to tell you what I've told everybody on social media, okay? And that's, you know what? John Calipari's awesome. I don't want to hear from you that, I'm going to talk about the guys that he's going to have on campus. I think he's about to go on a huge recruiting run. Spare me with the, he won't win with anybody. It doesn't matter anyway. Well, I fundamentally disagree, because in my opinion, John Calipari is about to put together a monster roster. And keep in mind, as much as everybody says he never wins, he never does this, he never does that, SEC this year, his team finished in second place in the toughest SEC ever. That's not excusing the disappointment in the NCAA tournament. But John Calipari, I think, let me even say this. I think John Calipari is re-energized. I think he's refocused. I think it's important for him to now be at a school where the fan base believes in him, the fan base believes in the message and the vision. And I think it was good for him to get a complete restart on the roster, where you don't have to keep a couple guys that maybe you don't want to because they're already in the program. You don't have to be the one and done school where every freshman coming in expects to be out in a year. And I think based on what he's already done, what he's going to do, that he is going to have a top 10 roster, good enough to make a Final Four next year. And I think it's going to come from the balance of freshmen, elite guys, and also upperclassmen as well. So let's go ahead and dive into what John Calipari is doing. By the way, I am told we could get a commitment anytime out of Arkansas, so keep in mind that. But with that said, let's talk about what Arkansas has and what they could have after what should be just an insane recruiting weekend. So we know Big Z following John Calipari from Kentucky. We know that on top of that, Carter Knox, the 5-star, committed earlier this week. Couple 5-stars on campus we'll talk about in a minute, but let's focus on the portal stuff, because Calipari has a lot of work to do to fill out that roster. And when you talk about a loaded portal weekend, oh, it's bananas, okay? So first of all, the big name that has been linked to Arkansas over the last couple days, it is Johnell Davis. Johnell Davis is, in my opinion, the best player in the transfer portal right now, okay? And this has really gone on for a while. It's been about 2 or 3 days where it feels like he's been linked to Arkansas. So Arkansas fans, I know this is not news to you, but Johnell Davis is, in my opinion, the best player in the transfer portal. 18 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, 41% shooting from the three-point line, enters the portal after 4 years at Florida Atlantic. And I'm here to tell you, listen, he can play at any level. Okay, don't tell me, oh, it's Florida Atlantic, it's this, it's that. Some of his biggest games were against the elite of the elite competition that they played at Florida Atlantic this year, okay? This 35 points against Arizona in that pre-Christmas game that they played in Vegas. Went for 26 against Texas A&M in the Old Spice Classic, the Disney Wide World of Sports tournament in Florida during the Thanksgiving holiday. He went for 28 against North Texas. A few weeks later, they played North Texas, and he goes for 29, has 18 in both conference tournament games, 18 in the NCAA tournament, lost to Northwestern. And so he's entered the portal. Arkansas appears to be the favorite. And what I will tell you about Johnell Davis is this, is that I believe he is as good as anybody. And I think Arkansas actually makes a lot of sense for him, okay? And I know everybody wants to criticize John Calipari, but there's 2 things that make sense to me as to why I believe that he is a great fit at Arkansas. One, we've talked about it. Calipari, whether you like him or whether you hate him, he can get a guy to his max potential in one season, probably better than anybody in college basketball. Now, you could argue it came at the expense of Kentucky's wins and losses in the tournament over the last couple of years, but I keep saying it. Who was Reed Sheppard before this year? Really good high school player, high school legend, but nobody had them as a top 10 pick. Now he's going to go top 10. Rob Dillingham. Go read the high school evaluations. Out of control, loose with the ball, a little bit skinny. Rob Dillingham comes in, believes in the vision from Cal, and is going to be a top 10 pick. And so I bring it up because Johnell Davis, if you're going to be 1 year in college basketball, you know what? You sit there and say, look, guess what? I'm going to stay 1 year. I need to go to the place that is going to maximize me for that one season. And so because of it, I think that Arkansas makes a lot of sense. And I would say right now, as of Thursday night at 6:47 Eastern time, I would say that Arkansas is probably the leader for Johnell Davis. Also visiting this weekend, first reported by Jeff Goodman. He was the first one I saw anyway. Visiting this weekend is Jonas Aidoo. 7-foot center, Tennessee, played on their Elite Eight team. And he is a guy who averaged 11-7 this past year at Tennessee. Now, he's a little bit different than some of these other big guys. He is very much a back to the basket, low post guy. You're not going to throw it out to him 25 feet from the basket. He's not going to take you off the dribble. He's not going to beat you, whatever. But what he can do, within 5 feet, he's elite defensively, and he is going to finish around the rim. And so I bring it up because I look at Jonas Aidoo, and I think if he were to commit and play with Big Z, I think that those two actually fit very together nicely because Big Z can step out and stretch it. Jonas Aidoo can play in the paint. But then, oh, by the way, if one of them gets in foul trouble, if Aidoo gets in foul trouble, Big Z can go down low. I like how those two fit. Now, it is worth noting, by the way, Jonas Aidoo, the buzz is that probably realistically, the lean there as my light was about to fall off there. I apologize about that. You got to see some cool stuff in real time. But anyway, Aidoo, the buzz is that the lean from Jonas Aidoo is probably right now Baylor. And so I bring it up to very simply say Jonas Aidoo in the portal, but he is expected to visit Arkansas this week. Right before I got on air, we got late breaking news. I had heard this was coming. I was told to kind of sit on it, basically like, dude, go ahead and, don't put this out there. We don't want this out just yet. And it wasn't from Cal or the school or anything, but just some people I know around Arkansas. But Brandon Garrison, former McDonald's All-American, is headed to Arkansas to visit this weekend. 6'11", played the last 2 years, or the last year, at Oklahoma State. little bit more of a developmental guy, more of a low post guy. Again, a guy that I think would fit nicely with Big Z. But Brandon Garrison, 7.5 points, 5.5 rebounds. He's an interesting one. He's been in the portal since the opening. He was the first big name to go into the portal. And it was funny because he had one of those non-contact tags on his recruitment. In other words, he didn't want to be contacted. I think he thought he knew where he was going. And then he probably got in the portal. He's like, wait a second now. I could go visit this school. I could go visit that school. This place wants me. That place wants me. And so Brandon Garrison will visit Arkansas this weekend. By the way, I was told that Kentucky was trying to get him on a visit this weekend. So if Coach Cal closes this one, that's a big one. But Brandon Garrison, really good player. Now, in terms of other notes, I mentioned a minute ago, I do think we are on commitment watch at Arkansas. And so this might be outdated in about 10 minutes. But I bring it up because there were 2 high school recruits on campus over the last couple days. Boogie Flan, Billy Richmond. Both had been committed to Kentucky. Both asked out of their letters of intent. Both visited Arkansas on Wednesday. And I think one or both of them should commit by the end of this weekend. I think both will probably commit within the coming days. Boogie Flan, we've talked about a lot. So forgive me if this is all repetitive, but 6'3" guard, 6'3" guard, originally from the New York City area. Combo guard, good with the ball in his hands, good with the ball out of his hands. And so he was a top 25 recruit, McDonald's All-American. I really like him, and I think he's a guy that, depending on who Arkansas fills around him, I don't know that you want him handling the ball 31 minutes a game, but let's say hypothetically DJ Wagner comes to Arkansas as well. DJ Wagner on the ball, Boogie Flan off the ball. They play well off of each other. I think this kid has a chance to be like a double-figure type scorer at Arkansas next year, and I think it's basically done. We've talked about it a lot. It doesn't appear as though Mark Pope and his staff are aggressively pursuing Boogie Flan. And so Kentucky seems to be out of the picture. His lead recruiter to Kentucky, Orlando Antigua, is headed to Illinois. I don't think that Illinois is a factor, and it does not really feel like there is very much news in terms of anyone else that is seriously making a run at Boogie Flan, or maybe the better way to put it is I don't know that there's a single program that feels like they're in good position with him. I know other schools made a run at him. I don't know that anybody has really feels like they're in good position, but Boogie Flan, I expect to commit soon. Billy Richmond, also I expect to commit soon. Another guy that we've talked quite a bit about, but again, his dad played at Memphis under John Calipari, top 25 kid in this class. His dad played for John Calipari at Memphis, 6'5" kid. I guess there's some crystal balls in for him, but he visited Arkansas over the last couple days. Hard playing wing, not a great shooter, but he busts his butt. And listen, for people who don't know, from Memphis, played high school basketball in Camden alongside DJ Wagner. Do expect DJ Wagner to eventually be an Arkansas Razorback as well. And so I bring it up because that is your Arkansas Razorbacks update. Couple other notes, because I am just, this show is crazy. By the way, thank you to all the comments. There is so much going on in the world of college basketball right now. If you're just joining us, had to go live early. We'll talk a little NFL draft on Monday's show. Didn't really feel like today was like I couldn't go late. And so it didn't feel like we should talk too much football because everything's going to be outdated within an hour or so when the draft officially begins, which it will begin about an hour from now. So let's go ahead and wrap with 2 other things because the portal today got even crazier than it's been. And also Liam McNeeley. I think everybody's trying to figure out what's going on with him. So first of all, portal. This is important, okay? So the portal is extra portally over these last couple days, okay? So what I think it is a few things. One, I'm sure if you care about this stuff, most of you probably saw, but the rules have again changed as it comes to the transfer portal. What do I mean by that? Well, I think Jeff Borzello was the first one to pick up on this, but if you remember, in previous years, you could, if you were a grad transfer, enter the transfer portal at pretty much any point. And so there was a different deadline for undergrads versus graduate transfers. Jeff Borzello put this out the other day. For the first time ever, they have changed the rules. Everybody's got to be in the portal by May 1. And so I think what we've seen over the last 24 hours or so is a bunch of guys that may go pro, that are thinking about going pro, that might not go pro, but they decided, you know what? I can't wait. I got to put my name in the portal because I thought I was a grad transfer. I thought I had all summer, and now I don't. And so I better get to work. Couple really big names, and I got some pretty good recruiting intel on a bunch of them, okay? So first of all, Lamont Butler from San Diego State is officially in the portal. And if you've listened to this show for years, I've talked about, I do have a little bit of a personal relationship with Lamont and his family. I've known Lamont since he was 14 years old. A buddy of mine coached him in high school and said, you got to come out and see this kid. He was a sophomore, young for his age, by the way. And I remember walking in the gym and he was probably about 5'6", 5'7", probably 130 pounds. And I was like, okay, if you say he's a high major guy, I'll take your word for it. But I didn't see what my guys saw, and you come full circle. I mean, listen, he was a young kid, whatever. That's what makes great evaluators. Well, he just finished an awesome career at San Diego State. I'll say this. He has declared for the draft, and I do think that I feel certain saying this. I think the decision was really tough for him. I think he understands he is a San Diego State legend. For people who forget, he's the kid who hit the buzzer beater in the Final Four to send San Diego State to the championship game against Florida Atlantic. And I don't think he necessarily really wanted to even go into the portal. It was something he struggled with. I think there was a point in the offseason where it was like, it's not an option. I'm either going pro or I'm using my COVID year. But there's too many opportunities. The money in NIL is too good. And I think his family has to at least explore it. And so what I will say, and I tweeted this out on Wednesday night, this is going to be an open recruit. This is not, we're taking the biggest bag. This is what place can put us in position to have the best success going forward and put us in position to get drafted. Because the thing about San Diego State, listen, Brian Dutcher's done an incredible job, but that is not a system that is built to produce dudes that put up crazy numbers. Went back and looked it up. They've only had one guy average more than 11 points per game over the last 2 seasons. Okay, that was Jaden Leday this year. What they do, they play slow, they play a lot of guys, and so don't tell me that he only averaged 9 points per game this year. I know, I don't care, and I promise you, coaches don't care either. Because what people are saying is, put him in a system where he's playing a little faster, 31, 32 minutes a game. Let's see what he can do. But 9.5 points per game, elite defensive player. I think this is important to note. He was the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year as a guard. The Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year as a guard. And so because of it, I think you could argue he's the best perimeter defender in college basketball. 5th year, gonna see what's out there. And I'll tell you this, producer Matt, pop up the tweet because I talked to somebody close to him today, and his first list is absolutely loaded. Among the schools that have already reached out to Lamont, Texas Tech, Kentucky, we just talked about their wild recruiting weekend, Duke, USC, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Washington. I don't believe there's a favorite right now. I don't believe that they're going in and they kind of already know where they're going. I think a lot of people, USC, Eric Musselman ties to the Mountain West from his Nevada days. Listen, Muss a great coach. I think there's good reason to play for him. I don't think there's any favorite. Obviously, Kentucky needs a point guard. Duke would probably like another lead guard. But I think they're looking at this situation as who can get us to the NBA. By the way, remember this about San Diego State. For anybody that's looking at the stats and saying he stinks. Remember, Keyshawn Johnson was a very similar player at San Diego State. Averaged 8 or 9 points per game last year. Goes to Arizona and for a time was playing like an All-American. I think he gets drafted. Next up, other big names that entered. Guy we don't have the graphic for, I don't think, producer Matt, because there's 2 guys that have just happened in like the last half hour. So the first one, Kadari Richmond. This is a name that you absolutely, positively need to know. Absolutely, positively need to know. This kid this past year, listen, he's a kid, by the way, I should really mention, played at Seton Hall the last 2 years. He actually entered the portal after his freshman year at Syracuse. And there was some like real buzz that he could be a lot like a first round type talent in a different system. Took him a while, took him a minute to figure it out. This kid was a stud at Seton Hall this past year. On the season, Kadari Richmond, 16 points per game, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 2.5 steals. Did not shoot the ball great, but over the course of his career, he's been a pretty good shooter. He's about 6'6", 6'5", lead ball handler. Listen, this is a guy you got to put the ball in his hands. So wherever he ends up, and I think I know where he's going to go, we'll talk about it in a minute, you got to put the ball in his hands and you got to trust him. He's not a guy that can play off the ball. He's not a 3. He's not a 4. He is a ball in hands, make plays kind of player. Bring it up, enters the portal. The buzz is that St. John's is the favorite. Jeff Goodman put that out. As I go to scratch my nose, I'm looking like I picked my nose on TV here. But Jeff Goodman put out that St. John's is the favorite. I have heard the same. Remember, St. John's, they have the crazy NIL money from Mike Rapoli. They're finally getting going in the portal. They added the center from USC. They added the wing from North Texas. This is a guy that they covet. I think they feel pretty good about his spot. It is worth noting, by the way, with Seton Hall. Seton Hall has lost its top 3 returnees this season. 3 guys that could have returned: Kadari Richmond, Dre Davis, Dylan Adeyewusu, all could have come back. They all left. I'm here to tell you, if I am a guy that is, if I'm Shaheen Holloway and I'm losing all my top guys, I got to be furious. And it's an NIL situation. The buzz around college basketball, they just don't have the money to compete. And I feel bad. But I mean, if you're losing your top 3 guys that could all come back off a good team, NIT champion, should have been in the NCAA tournament, that's probably not a great sign. They got to raise some money or they're going to lose their coach. Like if I'm Shaheen Holloway and I'm sitting here losing all my best players, I'm pissed. And I basically say, I ain't staying here to get my brains beat in by schools that got more money than me that are just going to take all my best players. So that's something to keep an eye on. Another name, I just saw this hit my Twitter feed within the last half hour. Jalen Wells from Washington State. Really good player. Don't let the stats fool you. 6'8", transferred up from the D2 level. 1 year at Washington State. 12.5 points, 41% from 3. I am not an NBA draft expert, as we're about an hour away from the NFL draft, but I am not an NBA draft expert. But I bring it up solely to say that Jalen Wells, people say, is an NBA type wing. 6'8", athletic, 13 points per game, 42% shooting from 3. And what's interesting about him too is he's another one. His head coach went to Stanford, and so because of it, his head coach going to Stanford means that he's probably not in play to follow his head coach. Not a knock on the kid. It's just really, 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 really hard to get into Stanford. So we will see what happens there. Jalen Wells in the portal. Producer Matt, do we have the Norchad Omier pop-up? Because that was one I told you about. Look at Norchad. The Nicaraguan nightmare. No pun intended. He's from Nicaragua originally. Trying to become the first player from Nicaragua to ever play in the NBA. He is a really good college basketball player, though. 17 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, led Miami to the Final Four last season, and didn't go well for Miami this year. And on Thursday, he entered the transfer portal. This kid's a stud, man. This kid's a stud. He's a little bit undersized, 6'7", but he plays his butt off. You know, look, I saw him in person at the Final Four last year. I mean, you could see kid shredded. And just a really good college player. I think he'll be best kind of at the 4. 1, by the way, to play in the NBA, he's going to have to be a 3-4. But 2, going to be best in a situation where, a bigger guy next to him. If he's playing the 5, there's just going to be games where it's just a mismatch. You know, you think about him playing against Donovan Clingan last year in the Final Four, Armando Bacot this year. So you want to go to a place where there's a potential for the opportunity to play alongside a true 5, but Norchad Omier is an absolute beast. By the way, as you can see on the bottom, go ahead and follow CBB Transfers on Twitter, CBB Transfers on Instagram for all your late-breaking portal news, CBB Transfers on Twitter and Instagram as well. Finally, one final story that I do have to get to because I've gotten a million questions on it. By the way, I think I bit off more than I can chew on this show because I have, talk about going, to the wall here. My goodness, have we talked a lot of hoops as you guys all get ready for the NBA draft. By the way, 800 between Twitter and YouTube, we're over 3,000 live viewers an hour before the draft. So thank you all for your support. And there is one more topic that I want to get to. Again, because I've been asked about it roughly 700 times in the last 48 hours. And it involves the recruitment of maybe the top available high school player available. I don't think he is by the recruiting rankings. I think our buddy Jaden Quaintance is probably number one. But Liam McNeeley, the 6'8" wing, originally from Texas, played at Montverde Academy, and there is a lot to talk about in his recruitment. So what do we need to know? Well, when we last talked Liam McNeeley, I think it was over the weekend. But I bring it up because Liam McNeeley, 6'8" wing, originally from Texas, now at Montverde, was set to visit UConn this week. Visited on Monday and Tuesday. And what I can tell you, I didn't talk to anybody on the UConn staff, but as you can guess, UConn alum, spent a couple years there, spent a lot of money that I didn't have at the time, paying my tuition. And I know some people at UConn. And I feel very confident that they went into the week thinking they were going to get him, and they came out of the visit on Tuesday thinking they were going to get him. The UConn fans, like any other fan base, they were nuts on social media, telling me, oh, you know, Liam followed this guy on Twitter. Liam's mom followed this coach on Instagram. They followed the UConn strength and conditioning here and there and da-da-da-da. I had one buddy tell me, I don't know if it's true. UConn fans, don't get mad at me. But I was told, like, the official UConn Twitter accounts and social media accounts don't follow a player until he actually commits. And so I think UConn was very much on commitment watch, really, all of Tuesday into Wednesday. The problem is, and we know how this works, if you don't get a kid committed when he's on campus, it is always something that may have happened or that could have happened. But once you get that kid away from campus, if you don't get that commitment, you start to worry. And that's where I think UConn fans are, is I do think there's another school that's emerged. For UConn, you know what this actually reminds me of? Last year, UConn aggressively recruited a kid by the name of Nick Timberlake, who ended up at Kansas. But he took a visit to UConn, and I remember it was like done. It was like, we're bringing him in to cross the T's, dot the I's, and size him up for a uniform. And what ended up happening? Leaves campus, doesn't commit. Leaves campus, doesn't commit. Leaves campus, doesn't commit. And then a few days later, commits to Kansas, to the shock of everyone. Now, for UConn fans, it ended up working out okay, because for UConn fans, they basically sat there and said, well, you know what? We ended up with some guy named Cam Spencer. I think it all worked out for the best. I think everything worked out fine for UConn fans. But at the same time, it has those vibes, or it was done until it wasn't done. And it is worth noting, I think there's another school that is very much back in the mix for Liam McNeeley. I think it's probably Kentucky. I don't think anything's official, but listen, if Liam McNeeley leaves without committing, that's not a great sign. Now, by the way, I always should give the caveat. I'm recording here in real time. Maybe he'll commit in an hour or 4 or 10, and this all looks stupid. Maybe I'll look like an idiot. But I don't get the sense that he is on the verge of committing to UConn here on Thursday night or Friday morning, just days after leaving campus without the commitment. And so the longer you wait, the more it allows other schools to get involved. And I do believe Kentucky is going to be a factor. First off, we talked about it to lead the show. Alvin Brooks, the new assistant coach for Kentucky, was just hired. Where is he from? He's from Baylor. Where is Baylor? In Texas. Where is Liam McNeeley originally from? Texas. And so there are obvious ties there. And listen, Mark Pope isn't backing down on anybody, nor should he. And I think it'll be interesting to see, as I have not heard that there is a visit coming, but it'll be interesting to see if there is a visit in the works. Because at the end of the day, Kentucky gets that kid on campus, they can sell him a couple things. One, the NIL is going to be great. We know Mark Pope has money to burn. He's not afraid to spend it, especially on players that fit his system, which is exactly what Liam McNeeley does. And so I solely bring it up to very simply say that when I look at the situation involving Liam McNeeley, the longer this goes, the more it allows other schools to be involved. And here's the crazy part too, It's late in the process. You thought he knew, and after the UConn visit, there was nothing scheduled. And so again, maybe it ultimately means nothing. Maybe he ultimately gets that commitment and it's not a big deal, and UConn gets the commitment and whatever. But now all these schools that you thought were completely out of the mix can get back in. Is it Kentucky? Alvin Brooks, now the associate head coach or one of the lead assistants at Kentucky from Texas, do they get in? Does maybe Michigan get in? There's a lot of buzz about Michigan. We talked about them. First phone call Dusty May made as the Michigan head coach was to Liam McNeeley. And oh, by the way, there's going to be others. Arkansas's got money to burn. They're not going to be afraid to spend money if they can get that kid on campus. And so I would just tell you, just be on the lookout here, because I don't think, I think if it was done to UConn, it would be done. I don't really understand why it hasn't happened already, unless there is some bad juju going on. But Liam McNeeley, that is your latest. I wish I had something better for you. All right. Think that's really it for today's Aaron Torres pod. Tell you what, producer Matt, unless there's a great question or two, let's go ahead and get out of here, because, it's about less than an hour till the draft. You guys want to watch the draft. And from what I'm told, by the way, the chat is just a lot of people fighting right now. So I'll tell you what, I didn't ask you to drop questions, and it is about an hour till the draft. We're going to get out of here. Again, if you just started listening, remember, we talk a lot of football on this show. We normally would talk draft. Frankly, I probably would have just waited until after round 1 and gone live there. But at the same time, I have family in town. We're going out to dinner. My mom actually just texted me. I'm happy to see her. But it also means that probably for right now, no football. So basically, I'm going out to dinner with my mom and my family. So don't think it's going to be possible for me to wait until midnight Eastern to react to the NFL draft. So we're going to get out of here. If you're not subscribed to the show, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. I see 3,000 of you watching on Twitter right now. Go to the YouTube comment section. Go to the YouTube and subscribe to the Aaron Torres pod. By the way, we started this month at 35,000 subscribers and change. And we are now over 39,000 subscribers. I love you all. I appreciate you all. And on top of that, let's get to 40K before the end of this month. Can we get to 40K by the end of this month? I think that we can. That would be incredible. If you're not subscribed, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give me a quick 5 stars. Kind of mad because I thought there would be an Arkansas commit in the middle of the show. I also think by the time you're listening to this on Friday morning, there may be a commit or two, but I'm going to get out of here. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me. Shout out to my mom, who is patiently waiting for me to get off this live stream so we can go out to dinner. Be back Sunday night. We'll talk NFL draft and what should be a crazy weekend in college hoops.